Welcome to this session of the DoD Cloud Exchange. My guest today is Rob Seaman, the Senior Vice President of Platform Product at Slack. Rob, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
My pleasure, Jason. Thank you for having me.
As we continue our conversations today about really not just the cloud, but DoD modernization, what we're seeing across the Defense Department is this push to really connect different parts of it, right? No longer are these silos happening, no longer are these, oh, well, I'm in finance, but I don't want to talk to the HR people and vice versa. And that really comes from this idea of collaboration and coordination that's happening. So that's where I'm going to start with you, Rob, is agencies within DoD and really across the government are really trying to unlock these tools that a lot of the private sector has been using to make their lives easier. How can they do that? What are you starting to see among agencies, specifically in the DoD?
Yeah, Jason, one of the things we are most excited about is actually seeing these collaboration technologies that have been so successful in the private sector make their way into the public sector. And there's a few key aspects of these collaboration technologies that I think can help with what you said, especially with some of the larger agencies that are interconnected, potentially geographically dispersed, or may have people that are working both in office or at home. Some of the primary benefits we see from these collaboration technologies are one, alignment, and two, from that is speed. And the ability to get people together and aligned around a particular initiative, topic, team, or work item faster than you ever have been able to do before, asynchronously in a way that's citable over and over again without having to get people into a meeting, is proving to make organizations just a heck of a lot more fast. And that's one of, I think, the most promising things from the private sector that we're seeing move over into the public sector. We're even seeing the Army software factories say that tools like Slack are allowing them to disseminate information to people in 2 or 3 days faster than they might have before without even having to call together a meeting.
We were all get caught up in that. Oh, let's put a meeting together. Let's send an invite out. Let's figure out times it works. And I think the alignment and speed piece is getting to be more important, and especially. And this is not a cybersecurity conversation, but is there a problem? Yes, there is. I'm seeing it now. You can have that versus the email or the back and forth. So the speed and alignment comes together. Great example of the Army software factory getting word out. Can you go down that path a little bit more about not just them, but more generally, how is that speed important? Is it just the instant messenger, or is there more to it than just, I can send Rob a note and Rob will read it?
It's definitely more than the instant messaging is certainly one part of it. One of the things at Slack we say is working at the speed of Slack. I actually said it this morning. It can be for longer running projects, teams, work items. Think of like any person that joins a new role. Inevitably, they're joining a role that has existed in the past. It's infrequent that they're joining a role that's just being created or hasn't existed before. And with joining a role that has existed in the past or may have been filled by a person in the past, one of the biggest challenges in getting that person up to speed is historical context. And often that means they're hiring managers saying, hey, here are all the files that I know of that the person that previously did that job worked on. Here are all the people I think that they connected with to actually get that job done. And here's 5 others that I think you should maybe meet with. But we can't really share their email with you because that's non-shareable information. And so I think that's one of the biggest benefits of a concept like channels that we have in Slack is these channels can span significantly long periods of time for longer running projects, topics, teams, or work items. And you can dynamically change the people that are participating in those channels over time. So a great private sector example is actually, let's say, a marketing campaign. You're working on a campaign with a third-party agency for 6 months, if you will. Well, you're going to hire new creative contractors that come into that process. Potentially, you'll have new marketing analysts that join your own company. You don't have to forward a series of emails. You don't have to go point them to a bunch of different files or say you need to meet with these 3 people. You just add them to the channel, and they can read all the way back to when the campaign was initiated. And we see that happening in public sector as well, where you may have a particular initiative, a particular build that's going on, or a particular interagency initiative where you're constantly adding people over time, new people are joining roles. And that shared context helps people get to effective in their job, sometimes 5x faster than they were able to before.
Rob, we call it a Federal News Network the beer truck memo, right? You got to have a beer. If you get hit by a beer truck, someone can pick up that memo and do your job. Yours is much better than the awfulness of thinking about a beer truck memo. The ideas of collaboration, coordination, obviously we're seeing them more important than ever. Was especially when we talk about hybrid workforce. Give me a sense of how agencies are starting to look at this. Hey, why do we need to do this better? What can we do to improve it? Again, I'll go back to what are some of those trends you're starting to see that have really emerged over the last 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, so obviously we've seen the DoD update their telework policy for the first time since 2012, which is awesome to see the DoD embracing that. I think we all learned a lot over the course of the last 3 to 5 years. I think a well executed hybrid workforce strategy can actually result in a much more productive organization as a whole. Uh, but the beginnings of it can be difficult. And so what we've tried to do is actually start introducing some tools to make it easier to work in a hybrid environment, both for, let's say, the agency, but the employee of the agency themselves. So when you're in a hybrid workforce, I think of myself, like today, I have to pick up my son at school at 3 p.m. So I've got a window of like 30 minutes where I just like can't work. I have to go pick up my son, be physically present, get him back here. But I know I'm not going to miss anything because all that stuff again is available in channels. But there's a couple of specific things that we've introduced that we kind of miss from the physical world when you're in the hybrid world. One is just what we call the water cooler exchange, or bumping into somebody in the hallway. There's a lot of organizational context, knowledge, informal relationship graphs that are known and established by these, like bumping into each other at the coffee machine, or getting a glass of water just in the hallway. I mean, we kind of miss that in the fully remote world. And so we've introduced tools that kind of allow you to more serendipitously engage with people just by clicking a button and being able to talk to them one-on-one without going through the rigmarole of scheduling a meeting, or being able to hop into a team channel and turning on audio for the entire team, and whoever's available can just hop in and converse with each other about the project everybody's working on. We also saw, like, for people like myself that have children, certainly working mothers that have children and are carrying a job and also need to coordinate myriad other things. The ability to do more and more asynchronous work is important. So like the need to be in a meeting, we're ideally trying to reduce the need to be in a meeting, because that's, one, I think, ineffective for the organization as a whole, but two, it's a tax on the individual. And so we've introduced a lot of tools for what we call asynchronous work, which is like encouraging people to write documents in lieu of a meeting, or encouraging people to record what we call a clip. We do this all the time, where instead of scheduling an all hands call for the company, every other all hands will actually do asynchronously. And our executives will just record clips, and then people can go in, watch them at 2x speed whenever they like. They can actually just read the transcripts instead of watching it if they aren't in a place where they can listen to audio, or it might be interruptive to what they have going on at home. So we're encouraging people to work in this hybrid world, but once they start adopting these tools, I think people will see that they can be even more effective in the hybrid world and get more done.
I love that idea of let's write a document instead of having a meeting and record a clip. Imagine when you say clip, we're talking about video. We're talking about something where it can be, hey, in these 3 to 4 minutes, I'm just going to tell you, I'll do a brain dump on what going on with my project or the issue, or as you mentioned, all hands. Is that been popular among the executives too?
It has, it's a really good call out. It can be video or audio. And the beauty of it is, you look at email or any kind of text-based communication, it's often void of your personal tone and can often be misinterpreted. You may not write it the way that you meant for it to come across. It may not be viewed by the person on the receiving end the way that you meant it to come across. And video and audio can really help with that, with your tone, your voice inflection, your actual like physical presence in a video. So we do that a ton. So our executives, like I find myself at the end of the day, I'm just tired of typing or tired of being in meetings. And so I'll have had 3 meetings with customers that I think are relevant to the team, and I'll just go record an audio clip and put it into the channels, and people can listen to it or read the transcript whenever they want. our executives do that as well when they're traveling around the country and they're hopping into an office. They'll drop a clip into the office channel and say, hey, I'm coming into town. I'd love to reserve 30 minutes to do, drop in office hours for anybody that would like to, or have an impromptu lunch in the cafe. Or coming out of sales meetings, our team will often, record clips about what actually happened with the particular customer.
You also mentioned this idea of the asynchronous work, and I think that's still a big push for a lot of folks to get there, right? Well, oh, there's a meeting, I got to be there. If I'm not there, what am I missing? And then if there's an asynchronous meaning, well, I'll upload something for Rob, he'll read it later, he'll respond. Will I miss it? How do you kind of ensure that everyone is included, and there's not like, because you can get so many messages in a row, and then all of a sudden you've lost where it started. Is there a way to kind of create that asynchronous feeling that like you're at that synchronous meeting?
Yeah, one of the things we've done, I mean, this gets a little bit into kind of how we built Slack, but one of the things we've done with Huddles, which is the feature that allows you to just turn on audio or video and immediately be talking to someone, we do that in channels for team meetings. And one of the cool things about Huddles is it has what we call a durable thread. So if you're in a lot of meetings digitally, some of the other meeting tools, you'll often see valuable things happen in the chat thread to the right hand side. But as soon as the files are shared, links are shared, comments are made by executives that you want to take back to the rest of the team. But when the meeting's gone, you often lose context, or you lose history of that thread, if you will. And that's one of the things that we have started persisting in our Huddles. So I can see, as an example, like I'm sitting here talking to you in my Slack, I can see huddles that are happening in my product team's channels. And when we end this Zoom, I'll be able to hop in and I can actually read the thread of what was discussed in that meeting, any files that were shared and off. And, an informal best practice that we have for meetings is actually writing a summary at the end of that particular meeting, and then I can just go catch up. So I don't have FOMO, and I am not actually missing anything material. If I miss it, I'm often tagged within those threads and saying, hey, we need you here.
That really is something that benefits that hybrid workforce. As you mentioned, your own situation where you got to leave and go pick up your son and come back. And I think that people will appreciate that. The other side of this is the cost. There's a way to make these collaboration coordination tools, this hybrid work, more cost effective, but still become beneficial. I think you've been clear about the benefits. The cost piece too. A lot of people think, oh, another tool, something else I got to learn. Give me a sense of the cost effectiveness of really looking at collaboration coordination tools in this way.
Yeah, one of the things we often say within our product team is we are seeking what we call the steepest part of the utility curve, where the value associated with something is dramatically exceeds the effort to use the thing. And I think you've seen that with Uber, Airbnb, et cetera. You're just seeing a lot more vacation homes being booked than were before those things existed. A lot more car rides are being taken than were taken when it was only taxis. And so that's a big focus for us, is that the cost to use these things, either fiscally or from an end user perspective of learning a new tool, is dramatically lower than the convenience is dramatically higher and the cost is dramatically lower than the value that you achieve. So we work a lot in our software at making it materially more convenient to do these things. I'd go back to the meeting thing. I'd go to two things in particular. If you and I say we need to meet, traditionally, one of us is going to go take the action item to, okay, I'll schedule this. Maybe there are EAs involved, maybe there are not. And we'll probably have something right after this, go into another meeting. And then maybe after 5 o'clock, when we're done with all of our other meetings, we'll go through our list of action items and say, hey, I need to schedule that meeting with Rob. And you'll go through the calendaring gymnastics and find a time, and it may be 2 weeks later, at which point, what you were planning to discuss isn't even relevant anymore or has dramatically changed. So there's a big barrier to actually scheduling meetings. The other thing we see is we often talk about Parkinson's law of triviality, which is like people will, even though you may be done, people will make the meeting go as long as it's scheduled for. And you look at the meeting defaults in these meeting tools, it's often 25 or 30 minutes or 55 minutes or an hour. And you often see just, a lot of bike shedding happening as towards the end of these meetings that don't need to be happening just because the meeting was scheduled for that long. And so the way that we think about this is, one, make it a heck of a lot more convenient to join these things than it is a traditional meeting. We think we've done that with tools like Huddles, where it's literally just hit a toggle and you're talking. You don't have to worry about calendaring gymnastics. And one of the cool things we've actually seen by the usage of these things is like as I said, like the default meeting lengths in a lot of meeting tools is 25 to 30 minutes or 55 minutes to an hour. The actual mean length of a huddle that we've seen is 10 minutes. So that shows you that people are getting in and getting out and getting the work done in a really short amount of time. So we think we've dramatically improved the convenience. We also think we're helping from a cost perspective in the sense that we are actually seeing less time being spent in meetings.
Rob, you outlined some of the benefits of using these collaboration tools, coordination tools such as Slack. There's the other piece of this that I think you want to touch upon is this integration challenge.
Yep.
Hey, I have all these different platforms. Now I got to go to platform X and then go to platform Y. There's a lot of integration that agencies have to keep in mind. What can they do to overcome that big challenge?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been talking about here, primarily human to human communication. And if you've tracked like the collaboration space since its infancy in like IRC all the way up to where we're at today with tool proliferation and every single tool having like a chat window, the one thing that we believe that the one constant in all of work, whether you work at the Department of Defense or whether you work at a retail store or whether you work at a telecommunications company, and regardless of what role you're in, the one constant in all of work is communication. And if you look at any one of those agencies, any one of those companies that I mentioned, like an inconvenient truth about your day-to-day job is there has been app or tool proliferation. Like the average enterprise has over 1,000 distinct best-of-breed SaaS solutions. And I can imagine for the Department of Defense and many other agencies under that umbrella, that number could be even larger, right? And so that means the cognitive load for us as individuals, as we context switch between each of those apps, is pretty massive. And so you've seen a lot of those apps actually build collaboration into them, and that's pretty siloed. And so like our philosophy is that the work or the other systems should come to where you're communicating with your colleagues, because that is the one constant. And so we see a ton of value in actually bringing the systems that your people need to use into where the communication is happening. And the easiest way to think about starting to do that is simple things like approvals. When somebody needs to approve an expense report, or somebody needs to approve a project brief or a creative brief or something like that, just bring it to where they're communicating. It's also like a notification that may spark a conversation or requires the human to take an action. As an example, for us on the product and technology side of the house, that's when a customer incident happens. Or when a customer logs a high severity case. Just tell us. We don't have to go to another tool to look for it. It doesn't go get buried in email with other things. It's just right here where I'm direct messaging my colleagues and working in channels with my product teams, as an example for me. And I think, we see a ton of value just from those simple integrations. We're not saying like bring the entire user interface of your HR system, your expense reporting system over into your communication system. We're saying bring the things that need people's attention to where their attention is. They're communicating with their colleagues. And so we've seen, our parent company, Salesforce, like we moved expense reports and specifically the approval process for expense reports over into Slack. And we saw a reduction in the median time it takes to approve expense reports from 2.4 days to 1.7 hours across 80,000 employees. And we didn't do anything in the expense reporting software. We just pushed the notification and the ability to approve right to where people were communicating with their colleagues. And so you can extrapolate the benefit of that, obviously across 80,000 employees, but you can extrapolate that pattern to all of the other software that we use, which is what we're doing internally, which is going across that entire software stack of what we use moving the approvals to where people are, and then notifications of things they need to pay attention to into where they're communicating with their colleagues, which in our case is Slack.
Rob, if I'm a federal employee, I'm going to say, great example. I'd love to do that. But you work in a modern SaaS environment. You have so many. It's easier for the private sector. Are you seeing some of your customers in the public sector, whether it's state, local, federal, doing that same thing, taking advantage of the integration?
Absolutely. It's it's funny. I spend a lot of time with highly regulated industries as well as government agencies and our largest enterprises, where candidly, like, Slack can seem too fun for them, and like one of our jobs is to make everybody realize that you can have fun, but you can also use it in these highly regulated industries or within the government. And so I want everybody to kind of walk away with, this is absolutely feasible for you. And there's a couple things that go into it. Like, one is the out of the box integration. So as an example, for Slack, we have 2,600 apps that are integrated out of the box. Two is the security and compliance concerns. So we spent a ton of time making sure that Slack can work. Slack by default is FedRAMP moderate. Obviously, we're very proud to say that we're now FedRAMP high and can be used within the DoD agencies. But we spent so much time making sure that this is secure and compliant, and probably even more so than a lot of the communication things that are being used out there already today. So that this is certainly within the reach of a federal government employee. And so, one, it's easy. Two, it's secure and compliance. And I would doubt, with the exception of like very, very bespoke first-party systems, that you would be doing something that hasn't been done by the broader Slack customer base before.
I think folks would be found some relief in the understanding that not only you're FedRAMP moderate out of the box, but FedRAMP high, you achieve that as well. But even bigger, that there's something, I think you said 2,600 apps that are already integrated. Because again, the government has been pushing to move towards commercial software, commercial off-the-shelf software, even if it's been customized a little bit. A lot of those customizations are on the process side, not the software side of how it works. So I think that's a big benefit. You did mention security. Privacy is also another consideration. There are other issues around data loss prevention, audit logs, e-discovery. All those pieces and parts play a big role in using tools like Slack and others. How are you dealing with that? What's your message to a lot of agencies about kind of these other pieces and parts that maybe you may forget about or you may not realize are a big part of using these types of tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, candidly, our enterprise product team at Slack started 6 or 7 years ago specifically for this, which was the largest enterprise customers that are in regulated industries, and most certainly the government, have a much higher bar for the data that is flowing through within Slack, but also the security of that data and also the compliance of the environment itself. So yes, we have FedRAMP high, but something that we've had for a very long time. We have APIs for e-discovery, and a number of the most prominent e-discovery vendors are partners of Slack and integrated to Slack. The same thing goes for data loss prevention. We're actually creating our own DLP for within Slack Connect, which is the ability to use Slack outside of an agency to other agencies. But it will work with the existing data loss prevention solutions that you have today. We have enterprise key management. Not a lot of people realize that, but when you are using something like Slack Connect, everything can be encrypted with your own keys. But if you're working with other agencies, as an example, or perhaps contract vendors, each constituent can have their own keys, so that everything is encrypted and reconstituted at runtime. I would doubt there are situations that a federal agency is going to run into that we haven't encountered before, and this has been candidly one of our biggest investment areas for the last 6 or 7 years.
Rob, we've spent a lot of time during our conversation talking about what is happening today, but we got to look to the future a little bit. There's all this excitement over, I'm going to say it, we almost got through the whole thing without saying it, artificial intelligence, but you got to say it now every time. Where is the collaboration coordination going? What's the future look like?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that the future of collaboration and coordination is right at the intersection of automation and AI. And so we've talked a lot about human-to-human coordination. We've talked a lot about bringing systems into the equation to bring stuff to people's attention. But a lot of the things that have traditionally needed to be done by humans can now be automated. And some of that can be automated without AI, frankly. And so one of the big things that we've been working on is the ability to give any single user of Slack the ability to do automations that can make themselves and their teams and ultimately their agency or organization more productive. And so there is automation. So if something happens, make this thing go happen either in this communication system or in an external system. And do that on a routine basis as these things happen. So we are providing the ability for humans to do that, but literally every human, so it doesn't have to involve an IT person unless it absolutely needs to, because those people are so rate limited and throttled by capacity and the tools that they're using. And then we get into AI, and I think AI shows so much promise. This is not, to replace humans. Like we, on the commercial side of Slack, and within our own internal instance of Slack, we use AI for some very simple use cases, again, that are extremely convenient, that save us time and ultimately money. One is searching for information. Searching for information, like you should not have to be a Google engineer capable of using all the keyword hacks in the Google Chrome bar to find information that you need. You should be able to just ask a natural language question and get an answer. And so we're doing that in Slack. And I think, one of the things that Slack often becomes for an organization or an agency is, one of the greatest archives of conversation and knowledge of that particular agency or organization. And so we're exploring kind of the intersection of AI and knowledge discovery. But going back to a point we had earlier, which is also helping people get up to speed. I talked earlier about just being able to add somebody to a channel that's been running, say, longitudinally since an interagency project has been running for 3 or 5 years. They could go read all that stuff, right? But if you could just click a button and AI could summarize it into a set of bullets for them, that would make them more productive. And that's the type of stuff that we're really interested in and exploring right now. We're not looking at, replacing individuals with AI. We're looking at ways to have AI in place with the human at the helm that can make the human more productive.
Rob, we got about a minute left or less, so let me just ask you to sum up our conversation today a little bit. We hit upon a lot of different areas. When folks think about collaboration, coordination, they think about it today, they think about it in the future. What do you want to make sure they walk away with? What's the message you want to leave them with?
Yeah, certainly it can make, the individual worker more pleasant and productive, but I want people to walk away with the fact that using tools like this that allow you to achieve a higher level of alignment across your organization and all of your initiatives will ultimately make you as an agency faster. It allows you to embrace hybrid work. That's a reality to stay, is not everybody's going to be in the office, but your people that are in the office that are working with people that aren't in the office, and people that aren't in the office are ultimately going to be faster and more productive. And one of the ways that you can achieve that is by bringing more and more of your systems into where the communication is happening. Don't make people go search for tasks. Bring tasks they need to do to them, and allow them to quickly act on them. You're going to be faster, you're going to save money, and ultimately they're going to be happy and more productive.
All right, Rob, unfortunately, we're out of time for this session of the DoD Cloud Exchange. So let me thank my guest. Rob Seaman is the Senior Vice President of Platform Product at Slack. Rob, thanks so much.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate you including me, Jason.
I'm Jason Miller, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more from the DoD Cloud Exchange.